Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of our Slack podcast, where we discuss how Slack can help you and your team drive better collaboration and organizational efficiency, making your work life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. There's many ways in which Slack can do this for you, but today we're going to focus on how customer success teams can take advantage of some key features in Slack to drive better collaboration. To do this, I'm honored to be joined by Chris Mills, who is our head of customer success in EMEA. And it's the best person to have this conversation with. So welcome, Chris, and thanks a million for being here today with me. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Before we jump into the matter of Slack for CS and how your team uses Slack, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your tenure in Slack, your career so far, whatever you're comfortable to share.
Sure. So I've been with Slack for just coming up to 5 years, and prior to that, I was at Salesforce for 15 years. So in total, my career has really spent 20 years in customer success, but prior to that, I was in technology for a department store retailer in the UK. So 30 years in technology, but 20 years in customer success.
Nice. That's quite a journey.
It is. It's been a real journey. The last 5 years have been incredibly fluid, shall we say?
Nice. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how is your current team? Like, how does it look like, and how do you use Slack with your team at the moment? How does that look like, more or less?
Yeah. So, like most customer success teams, our role is predominantly to make sure that our customers get value from their investment in Slack. So the way that we do that is to make sure that we can come with the recommendations and best practices on how our technology can solve some of our customers' most crucial business challenges, whether that is growing geographically across the world, whether that's acquiring new companies and how to make that acquisition process much easier. There's so many solutions that Slack can provide. And the real key for me and my team is to make sure that our technology can help our customers achieve those objectives, those strategic objectives. And we use Slack internally for customer success in many ways, but I guess the most common way that I use it and I take benefit from it is really in two ways. The first one is in my leadership team. So whether that's structuring our team around individual teams, so team channels, whether that's a leadership channel that I have at an EMEA level, or whether I'm part of the global leadership team in Slack customer success and channels we have there. And each of those channels are a mix of private and both public channels as well. As we get to more leadership conversations, we typically keep those channels private and invite only. And then there are channels where we want to share some best practices, some knowledge, and we allow anyone in the organization to be able to access those channels. The other thing that is really important for me and really is a massive time saver is account channels. So for every one of our accounts that we look after, we have account channels where both the customer success, the account executive, the solution engineering team, and many other cross-functional partners are collaborating within those channels. And for me, the key benefit there is that I am able to access what's happening about an account at any point in time that I want to. And that's really removed. In my previous life at Salesforce pre-Slack, I would have 2, maybe 3 account reviews every week, which would be lengthy 1-hour conversations, meetings. But now I don't have to have those, which is very productive. So I get a great opportunity to be able to see what's happening in account channels. And if I want to follow up on something or monitor something, I can use the 3 dots and get notified on new replies. So they're probably the 2 main ways that I use that. And then obviously those account channels can to be external as well when I'm working with other customers.
Well, thank you for that. And for people who don't know you, I can say that Chris is one of these people that are always in Slack, like very, very heavy user of our product. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that the key benefit for you, like versus what you used to do in the past, to check accounts and follow up and be aware really of the customers that your team are dealing with, is that you're getting time back that you can focus on other things and with the same level of awareness. So I love that.
And it's interesting, just before we go on. So I came from a background of obviously using email, and I was an inbox zero email user. So I would ensure my email was clean. I would get nervous if I had lots of emails that I hadn't read, and I would mark things as unread or star them as a way of creating my kind of to-do list. And I try and do the same with Slack. So lots of different techniques and features and functions that I can use within Slack to keep the noise down, but also allow me to focus on what's important.
Perfect. Speaking of that, because there's something interesting that it's actually a feature that not everyone uses. I pitch it to customers a lot because I think it's one of these little things that is a massive game changer. But am I right to say when you say like inbox zero, like notification zero or unread zero, that you're referring to the unread view?
Yeah, so I typically start my day firstly by going to threads. So that's where I can see every conversation that I've either been part of or that I've chosen to follow. And as I mentioned before, those three dots open up a whole avenue of features that help you keep on top of things or be able to reduce noise. So for example, when you click on the three dots of any message, you can get notified of new replies or you can switch off notifications. Yep. So very often I switch off notifications because I don't need to see the continuing thread. If there's something that gets posted in channel that I want to make sure my team follow up on, or I want to see what the conversation, how that transpires, I get notified on replies. So I start my day in threads, which is where I see all of that information. And then from there, once I've cleared through that, I may use the remind feature very heavily. So if there's something in a thread that I want to come back to, anything that requires a little bit of thinking, I tend not to respond immediately, and I'll put it into my reminders. And then I'll move into my unread section. And that's really a game changer compared to email for me. Before, with email, I would have to switch, kind of go through every single email, which would be lengthy and time consuming. Whereas I can mark a whole channel unread if there's, maybe I'm in a feature channel and right now I don't need to see what's happening on that feature. But there may be other things that happen in a channel that, again, I use the remind function and I remind and then mark it as unread so that at any point in time, my remind or later section controls everything that I need to do. I want to keep a track on. One of the things that it really helps me for is if I ask somebody to do something, or I want to make sure that they're followed up on something, I can set reminders in a week, a month, or 2 months, and they're constantly there so that I don't forget about them.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really use Slack not only for the information, but also to offload safely priorities from your mind and trust the tool to remind you in a set amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the and the great thing about the unread function is it's easily accessible on your phone. So the first thing in the morning, the first thing I typically do is have a coffee before I sit at my laptop, and I will sit there drinking my coffee and just going through my unread, so that even when I get to my laptop in the morning, I've got a condensed list of things that I need to do and there's no noise.
That sounds really cool. So basically, all the jokes I make in any channel, I can trust that you have read them, right?
Certainly, Dad Jokes is a big channel that I follow on a regular basis.
Fair enough. Cool. That's really interesting. And in terms of like more leader precise type of use, what is something that you find very useful from Slack that helps you, like either, like you already mentioned the account channels to be like on top of what the team is doing, but maybe to connect or to have different conversations? What would be something that is really useful from Slack for you?
Yeah, I think one of the most useful one is cross-functional channels. So within customer success, our success somewhat is driven by the way that we partner with sales and that we partner with marketing. So I'm very often in channels that are predominantly sales channels or predominantly marketing or customer support channels, but I don't necessarily need to be heavily active. So I can be somewhat of a lurker and a watcher in those channels. And as I said before, if there are things that are interesting, in the past with email, I would get spammed with every reply to all conversation. Now I can choose to be part of that conversation or not by using the get notified on reply. So cross-functional channels are something that I use on a regular basis. And particularly, as I alluded to briefly, is features, and when we're building new product features, that's incredibly helpful to see the dialogue, the conversation, the decision making that some of our product team are making in a channel when they're building our product.
That's really interesting because Slack does bring you that level of ability to see what other people are doing and why, that transparency. And that is fantastic. It's really practical in terms of self information, but it's also, I think it has great impact on the culture.
I would say it has a great impact, I would say, on how we think about that when we speak to our customers about the product. Because we can understand decisions that were made during the product life cycle, and we can, we wouldn't necessarily share everything with the customer, but we would be able to articulate some of that. And then just on the leadership point of view, one of the things that I use heavily on a Friday afternoon, as you know, Miguel, is I produce a clip for my team every Friday afternoon. And that clip can be anything ranging from, my thoughts on something that's happened during the week or something that I'm planning to do in the future, or it could be just general top of mind and concerns that I have or focus areas that I have. And that is a real game changer because that takes me 5 minutes to record, and it creates a sense of transparency within our team that the only way historically you would be able to get that is to have an all hands or a town hall meeting, which would be 50 people, 60 people on my team would be 60 hours of time for everyone to be there. Whereas this is a 5-minute update that can be shared with the team and really enables me to be closer to my team, but also share some things that are top of mind.
Definitely. And from the receiving end, I think it's wonderful to things like, as you mentioned, like the proximity that conveys. Like I'm not reading a post, I am hearing you or other leaders speak, and obviously there's no confusion with the tone or anything like that. It feels more personal, even if we're like in different locations. But also, it also liberates my time, because if you happen to post that clip or an announcement at a time that I can't really focus on listening in that moment, as opposed to having an all hands that I would have to attend no matter what, I can self-serve and watch that clip later when it's convenient for my day, and I also gain that time back. So I think it's a wonderful tool.
And let me share, that isn't just internally. So I think probably 2 years ago now, it was a Sunday afternoon. I was watching my son play rugby, and a customer was going through a migration at the time, and they phoned me because they had a problem with their migration. And so they called me. I sent a Slack message to our team who were supporting it, and they kind of looked into what the problems was, etc., etc. Anyway, on the Monday morning, the CIO from the customer wanted to have a conversation with me about what happened, what went wrong, and how can we make sure it doesn't happen in the future. So I connected my assistant with his assistant, and in the background, they were trying to find a time for us. And as you can imagine, trying to find time with the CIO of a publicly listed company is pretty difficult. So in advance of that, I sent a clip to the customer through Slack Connect, which allowed them to, and I shared what went wrong and how we can fix it. The customer CIO then sent me a clip back half an hour later. So we couldn't find a time in our diary for 2 days where we could, get 30 minutes to chat. But actually within half a day and less than 2 or 3 clips backwards and forwards, we managed to resolve the problem and decide on a way forward. And so to your point, I wasn't available at certain times, he wasn't, but we were able to resolve that problem without the need of having to jump on a call and schedule something for 3 days' time. So not only was it time saving, but it was also faster to get to resolution.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like async collaboration does feel sometimes a little bit like time traveling. It feels like you're cheating because you manage to do some things. Also, one thing that I would like to point for people who are hesitant of clips, because I was at first. And to give context, when I joined the CS team, I asked a few questions to my manager, and he replied with clip. And this is at the beginning of clips. We had just released clips. And I was like, oh, now I have to listen to this clip to find the answer. It was an answer in terms of dates or something like a number or figure. Clips are searchable. So it doesn't pose any other time limitation in terms of that. If you're in a hurry and you need to search for a keyword and whatever, whenever you record a clip in Slack, it's also captioned. You can, so it is a fantastic tool. Sorry, I thought of that anecdote, but for me, that was the difference to accept clips.
And the thing what you're saying, Miguel, is what we see with a lot of customers is they don't necessarily know some of these features or these capabilities are available. And so as you uncover them, it's really important to share those examples with our customers, because that helps them be more their life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive.
Yeah, definitely. One other question: what are integrations that you or the whole team use on an everyday basis, and what do they do for you? Like, how do they make your life a little bit better?
So again, we've all experienced that working in a particular application, something comes up, you need to virtual swivel chair, log into a separate application and do something, and then your mental time that takes to transition to one application and back again is a productivity drain. So the natural applications that we use the Google suite of productivity tools. So when anyone comments on a slide deck or a Google Sheet, that will automatically come into my G Drive application, which is again a massive productivity improvement, because I can actually reply in thread from within Slack to that comment without having to jump out of Slack and into the Google application. The calendar is a really useful one, because not only can I see what's happening during the day without having to move out of Slack, but also it blocks my time in my status. So if I'm in a meeting, it will show that I'm in a meeting, so people know that when they send me a message. So they're kind of what I would describe as entry-level application integration for your productivity suite and your calendars. And then we step up a level, which is when we get to things like Workday and Concur. So we've all gone through that experience that you get an alert in email, or that you need to approve something in Workday, and it might be a holiday. So you need to click on a link, you need to then go through single sign-on to go to the application. And then in the top right-hand corner, you have notifications or inbox. You have to find, is it in my notifications or is it in my inbox? And particularly if it's PTO approval, I look at the date, somebody's requested some time off. I then have to go to the calendar in Google to see who else has got some time off at that time. Then I come back, accept that it's okay to approve it, and I'll approve it. So all of that can take, 3, 4, 5, possibly even 10 minutes to do. And my mental state has changed because I've moved away from what I'm doing and I'm now thinking about that. In Slack, that Workday approval comes directly into my Workday application. Slack, and not only does it tell me that, Miguel wants time off and I can approve it by clicking a button, but it also tells me who else has got time off during that period as well. So, that, as well as Concur, being able to approve expenses directly from within Slack, I can see all of the receipts that are there. I don't have to go and log into a separate application. And then other approvals that come through. Maybe somebody wants access to an application, somebody wants some travel approval. I can do all of that from within Slack. So it just really saves me virtual swivel chair into another application.
Definitely. And I'm really glad that that's the benefit that you highlight, because it is one of our core values. Like we give you time back in context changes. So that's great to hear from you as well. Before we leave it, a really important question that we can't forget asking any of our guests. What is your favorite emoji?
My most favorite emoji is the fist pump. So the animated fist pump. And as you well know, Miguel, if anyone posts anything and they see a fist pump from me, they know that I've read that. I often use the eyes as well. And I don't use it very often, but Matthias from Bolt Technology, who's a customer of ours, is a big fan of the honey badger, which is a great emoji that he uses quite a lot. And I'm quite partial to the honey badger, but my fist pump is the go-to for me.
Perfect. It is a cool emoji. I approve. At the end of the, say, like 10th podcast, we will release a ranking with the votings of the best emojis, and we'll make them publicly available.
And I hope the fist pump is up there.
Definitely. Like, it will definitely be in the rank. We'll see how, but it's a popular one. I think you have a good chance.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, is there anything else that, say, if I wasn't using Slack and you wanted to make me understand why Slack is really powerful, is there anything else that we haven't mentioned that you would mention, like, this is why you need to give Slack a try?
I mean, there are lots of other benefits and features that I use that really kind of make me more productive. I think the number one thing actually is when I return from time off. That's probably the most beneficial. You know, I've in previous roles where we were an email-driven organization, could possibly take 3 to 5 days. Having a week off on PTO, and it still could take 3 to 5 days to get to that inbox zero point that makes me comfortable. But with Slack, I can do that in kind of half a day. I can clear through all the messages, and because it's channel-based content, if there's a channel that is, for example, might be service performance. So how well our service is performing. On a daily basis, I probably want to check that. But when I come back from PTO, I don't need to check what the performance was a week ago, because that's kind of that part. So I can just mark that whole channel unread. And if I compare that how it was in my email world, I would have 7 emails that tell me about the performance. And as I'm scrolling through my emails, I would get it, I would have to delete it, then move to the next one. Whereas I could just mark the whole channel. So, and if you multiply that multiple times, the other channels could be, a social channel for our London office. There's probably, 5 or 6 messages a week that go in there telling us about anything from an event that's happening through to a fire alarm that went off. I don't need to see all of those when I come back from PTO. So I can mark that whole channel marked red. So returning from PTO is a massive game changer. As I say, I think I can go from what would take 3 to 5 days previously to half a day. In only half a day, I've got my list in my bookmark section, in my reminder section, that tell me all of the things that I need to do and all of the things that I need to focus on.
Perfect. That is indeed very valuable. Like, fighting that post-vacation depression and also that little anxiety of catching up. I think that's a very clever use case to mention. So thank you so much, Chris, for your time today and for joining us and telling us a little bit of what Slack does for you. Really appreciate, and hopefully we'll see you sometime soon.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello again, and welcome to the demo that we like to attach at the end of each episode of the podcast. Today, I wanted to show you 3 of the features that Chris Mills mentioned today that are fantastic ways of consuming your information in a way that is more organized, more efficient, but also that feels a little bit less daunting if you have plenty of notifications. So if you look at my sidebar, you can see that I have plenty of channels that are showing up in bold, meaning that I have a lot of reading to do. One way you could go about consuming information and reading all your information would be like clicking on each of these channels. But that has 2 downsides to it. One is that the order that the channels show up in your sidebar is alphabetically, and that may not reflect the order of relevance to you or importance for you to read the information. And also there's a small risk, but a risk anyways, that you could like misclick in one of the channels. It would be marked as read, even if you don't necessarily read the information, and that you may miss some important information that was available to read. So what I'm going to show you today is a way of going in like decreasing level of importance through all the information that you may need to read. So the first thing that you can notice here in my sidebar is that there's 2 red bubbles indicating that I have 1 mention in this channel and 1 mention in this channel. Now, in this screen in particular, it would be very easy for me to just click on them, but there's a better way of going about your notifications, which is clicking on the activity reader here, the little bell icon, and then filter by mentions. This will show only the information and like the messages that have a direct mention to myself, allowing me to read them like way quicker. So here, for example, we can click on the first message by Joseph and read that he was mentioning like, hey, happy Friday, will you be able to set up the onboarding canvas and share that with me by Wednesday next week, please? So that is a direct message for me, for myself. I read it, it is relevant, and more importantly, I can save it for later and add it to my saved tasks to make sure that I action on this later on. I haven't missed the information, and I have made sure that later on I will remind to act on this. We can check Jane's message, and exactly the same. She's asking me like, well, let me know that we have an issue with the calendar for an event. I save it for later, and I'll surely remember to take action on this. Once I've cleared my direct notifications, if you come back with me, like clicking on the Home tab, you can see that we have two views, one for unreads and one is for threads. I would suggest that after we are done with our mentions, we move into threads, because that is the second most relevant in the hierarchy of messages for each of us, meaning that it's threads that we're either participating in or purposely following if you mark to receive notifications about one thread. So in this case, I didn't have any threads unread for myself, but if you do, this is where they will show up. The unreads will show on the top of the view, and that's the second most important information that you should consume first. Once you're done with your notifications and your threads, though, what I suggest is that you go to the unreads message, view, that will show you channel by channel what messages you have unread. And here, no matter if you see something or not, things will only be marked as read when you purposely do so, allowing you to control what stays in your radar and what can be considered read or not relevant to you. So that's it. I hope that this helps you. And I really hope that you are enjoying our podcast and that you will enjoy the next coming episodes. So thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.